On a mission, British Prime Minister and his business delegation of over 130 are in Beijing. The goal, an EU-China free trade agreement. But does Europe have what China wants? We assess what Europe has to offer the world's second largest economy as it shifts from exporting abroad to selling luxury goods at home. Hello and a very warm welcome you with World Business Report. I'm Sally Bundock. Also in the programme, it's the busiest shopping day of the year for online retailers. Are you ready for Cyber Monday? But first, it is the UK's largest business delegation ever to visit China. Britain's Prime Minister David Cameron has arrived in Beijing with over 100 representatives from British business hoping to increase their share in China's marketplace. Mr Cameron's aiming for a free trade agreement between the European Union and China and to take the British-Chinese diplomatic and political relationship to a new level. It's a three-day visit and Mr Cameron has begun with talks with Premier Li Keqiang. Also on the agenda, a trip to China's international financial hub in Shanghai and the inland city of Chengdu in Sichuan province, a global centre for consumer electronics. During his stay in China, he'll also meet with Chinese investors, civil society representatives and students. Now, 50% of the delegation travelling with him are representatives from small and medium-sized companies. Martin Patience has been talking to one British businessman who's already made the leap.
Bustling Beijing, this is boom city for businesses, and we're just going to meet a British entrepreneur who's making T-shirts with a twist.
So shoes, bags, shirts. It's mainly...
Dominic Johnson-Hill started his business 8 years ago.
This is our biggest seller this year. It's a kind of Beijing, way of telling someone to get lost. We take a lot of East and West, so the Monkey King with a native Indian headdress and a Mao hat. And we've got a more obvious one. 8 means wealth in China.
And is there anything you can't print here?
For sure. Never play with Mao.
Chairman Mao is
Chairman Mao is definitely off limits. Yeah, that's one brand we don't play with. There's massive opportunity here. I mean, if you always keep one eye open as an entrepreneur, you just see that there's always markets here that haven't been opened. Especially in the creative industries in Beijing. Creativity is something that is really lacking here in China. A lot of things are innovated here or made here, but not really created here. So the creative market has huge opportunities.
Dominic's business now sells more than £500,000 worth of T-shirts every year. With the right product and perseverance, he says, you can make it in China. Martin Patience, BBC News, Beijing.
And the aim of this trip of the British Prime Minister and co to China is to pave the way for more European companies to tap into the world's second biggest economy. But the pace of change in China is fast, with firms shifting their focus from mass market goods for export to the hungry for high-end expertise that will help them sell more goods to their own increasingly sophisticated consumers. The BBC's Juliana Liu reports from the southern province of Guangdong.
A clothing factory in the heart of Dongguan, a boom town in South China's Pearl River Delta. These workers are the muscle behind the country's economic rise. But success has brought unexpected challenges. They can now command salaries double or even triple that of workers in South and Southeast Asia. With costs soaring, the man in charge of finances here tells me the Hong Kong-based owners considered leaving the country.
If we don't change, we have to shut down the factory in China. But we really have that, ambition that we want to be the last factory in China.
Well, these are the T-shirts that the Crystal Group started out making. Very classic, very plain. But as their costs grew, they had to start doing something very different. So they started making T-shirts with more embellishment, more ruffles, that allowed them to charge more and to make more profit. Officials had relied on cheap labor and beneficial exchange rates to achieve average economic growth of almost 20% a year for the past 3 decades. That business model is no longer viable.
低单的、简单的加工环节。
Low-end, low-value added factories will have to move inland or leave China. Companies with strong brands, those with their own technology or high-end manufacturers will stay and continue to flourish.
This science park in the nearby city of Shenzhen is what officials hope will be the future of the Pearl River Delta. Inside, Kemai Technologies develops software for supermarkets, restaurants and bars to keep track of their inventory. Its main market is in China rather than overseas. It employs skilled, educated young workers. South China's economic transformation is just beginning, but its intention is clear. Foreign investors keen to profit from China would be wise to keep up with this trend-setting region. Juliana Liu, BBC News in China's Pearl River Delta.
Well, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang has only just got back from his trip to Europe, but one that took him not to countries such as the UK, but to the underdeveloped East. Last week, China and 16 Central and Eastern European countries pledged to boost two-way investment and trade. Mr. Li told the Romanian Parliament that it's strategically important to a stronger relationship between China and Eastern Europe. So let's get some more. I'm joined by Rod Y, Associate Fellow of Asia Programme at Chatham House. Good morning. Thanks for coming in. So it's quite interesting, isn't it, that his trip to Europe just before David Cameron's arrival with over 100 delegates did not take him to the UK and other key economies.
Well, there certainly is a big Chinese interest in Eastern Europe because there are big opportunities there. China is looking to invest in Europe, and in a sense, Eastern Europe is cheaper and easier for Chinese investment than some of the more developed European economies.
So how successful do you think this trip of David Cameron's will be? He's saying his key objective is to broker this free trade agreement between the EU and China, which some say could be worth up to $1 trillion by 2020. They always put on these big figures, don't they, to sell it?
You always get huge figures with prime ministerial visits around the place, but China and the European Union are both huge economies. If they do negotiate a free trade agreement, that will be a very important agreement. The best I think that we could expect from this is a sort of political will to go into it, because the negotiation of such an agreement would be enormous.
And the will's there, isn't there, on the part of China? They've already been talking about this and talking about their interest.
Well, free trade agreements are very much the thing of the moment. There are lots of them already negotiated. China has negotiated a number with its immediate neighbours and would be interested, I'm sure, in an agreement with the European Union.
How easy will it be for the two sides to come to an agreement and actually have a free trade deal in place, given the history between the two sides, and also the many spats that there have been between the EU and China since China joined the WTO?
I think political will is one thing. Negotiating the actual text of an agreement would be a very long and complex process because the issues involved are huge, and as China becomes more developed and more interested in different sort of economic areas of interest, that brings in a whole load more questions for discussion.
All right, Rod Y, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning from Chatham House. Well, before we stop talking about China, we just must squeeze in the economic news from there today. Factory growth seems to have stabilised in the month of November. Let's speak to Sharon Jitlale, who's at our Asia Business Hub in Singapore. Nice to see you, Sharon. So China, very much the focus here for the audience in Europe. Tell us more about the economy.
That's right, Sally. Well, basically what we got is two gauges of manufacturing from China, both showing slightly different but still fairly positive pictures. The official Purchasing Managers Index was released this weekend. It showed that, of course, China manufacturing remained relatively strong for November, staying at 51.4. That's its highest level since April 2012 and unchanged as well from October. And then we saw the HSBC Purchasing Managers Index. That's another gauge of activity. It came came out this morning and it stood at 50.8 in November, and that's the second highest reading in 8 months, despite having eased marginally in October. And of course, these indexes are really important because they track manufacturing activity in China's factories and the workshops. It's very closely watched as a key gauge of the health of the economy, and any reading, as both of these were, above 50 indicates growth, and anything below that signals contraction. Of course, all of this is more evidence that the world's second largest economy is growing, although analysts have warned about uncertainties. For instance, there's weakness in small companies, there's lack of crucial employment, and all this point to vulnerabilities ahead of some of the key structural reforms that the Chinese government is putting through. China, as you know, is an important driver of regional growth, having expanded some 7.8% in the July to September period.
Thank you very much indeed, Sharon in Singapore. Of course, that story being felt on the markets. Markets being given a bit of a boost by that news. Let's squeeze in one more element you need to know about today. Online retailers are braced for their busiest day of the year as consumers take part in the annual pre-Christmas shopping spree dubbed Cyber Monday. Recent years have seen online shopping figures consistently peaking on the first Monday in December, thought to be a combination of the last payday before Christmas falling on the previous Friday and a weekend spent browsing in the shops for purchases. That's all from World Business Report. I'll see you soon as we look through the papers. Stay with us.